I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Okay, thank you for joining us here at the Global Medicine and Health Education Expo. And in this breakout room, we've got a really good session lined up for you. So just give us a minute while we get our speakers to join. We already have Ms. Jackie McIntosh, who has joined us already. We're just waiting for two other speakers to join us, right? So this session is being hosted by Keele University. And the title of this session is Maximizing Your Potential for Selection and Graduate Employability. Okay. And the host for this evening is Ms. Jackie McIntosh. And she's joined by two really qualified gentlemen, Mr. Adam Winterton and Dr. Gordon Dent. So I believe Dr. Dent is facing a small issue, but I guess, I think he should be joining us in a few minutes. In the meanwhile, I thought I'd just give you a brief introduction to our speakers, Adam and Dr. Gordon. Okay. So just to tell you a little bit about Adam first, since we can see him right here. So Adam is actually the internationalization director for the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. And, he's completed his Bachelor of Science in Physiotherapy from Coventry University. He went on to do an MSc in Neurological Physiotherapy. And most recently, he kind of did a degree at Keele University as well. So Adam has been working, has got over 17 years of work experience. Okay. A good 9 years was with the university hospitals of, associated with the NHS Trust. And for the last 8.5 years, he's been with Keele University. Okay. And if Adam is going to be covering the bit about physiotherapy, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have Dr. Dent, Dr. Gordon Dent. So Dr. Gordon Dent actually has over 22 years of experience. He's worked with the University of Southampton as a senior research fellow, been a member of the Royal Society of Chemistry, the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education, and more recently, he's not only the director of undergraduate admissions, but he's also a senior lecturer in pharmacology at Keele University, and he continues to remain a board member of the Medical Schools Council Selection Alliance. Okay, so a lot of things that we can see for Dr. Dent. So Dr. Dent has completed his Bachelor of Science at Chelsea College, University of London, where he kind of focused on pharmacology. And then he went on to do his PhD in Immunopharmacology at Imperial College, London. Okay. So let me not, take any more time. I think we've got some fantastic presentations and speakers here for you today. So over to you, Jackie, Gordon, and Adam. All the best.
Thank you. Okay, shall I start? Okay.
Yes, please.
So if I start sharing my screen. Right, could someone confirm you can see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to try and whiz through this pretty quickly about ways of maximising your potential for, I'll focus on selection into medical school in the UK and talk very briefly about enhancing prospects for graduate employability. So I'll be focusing on medicine here, and then Adam will be talking about allied health professions afterwards. And most of what I'm going to talk about is on making an impression at the stage of applying to medical school in the UK, because this is a very competitive process. The numbers of places for international students in public universities, medical schools in the UK is quite small, so you will be competing against a lot of other applicants. There have recently been a few new medical schools, some of them private, some within public universities, that take larger numbers of medical students, and there's one that takes only international medical students. I'll mention that later on. And then right at the end, I'll just quickly allude to the fact that some particular medical specialities are very competitive as well if you want to work in the UK after graduating. So the things I'd like you to think about in terms of maximising your potential for selection to medical school are on how you make a competitive application, So how you make yourself stand out from other applicants. And then I'll talk about some things you need to think about that you will be doing while you're a medical student in the UK to enhance your chances of getting the job you want after you graduate. Now, there's a lot of resources on the website of the Medical Schools Council. So there's a link in the bottom left-hand corner here showing where you can find those that will tell you what kinds of things medical schools look for in applications. And it's quite important to go through these so you get a clear idea of what all UK medical schools do in terms of selecting students and what the differences are between them. I'm going to quickly go through these 5 things that are listed on the left-hand side of the screen here that you need to be researching before you decide where to apply and before you start writing an application. Now, the first of these, most straightforwardly, is academic requirements. Whenever you're applying to a university outside your own country, you need to be aware of the fact that their admissions criteria, their academic entry criteria will be defined pretty much in terms of their own country's requirements. You may have to look around quite carefully to see what the requirements are from people applying from your country. So you'll need to dig down a bit to see what requirements UK medical schools have for various secondary school certificates from India, for example, or international baccalaureate. If you're doing that, some people will be in schools where they're doing international A-levels. If you can't find that information, it's really important to contact the medical school before you apply to make sure that you know that your qualification is accepted and that you know what grades you're going to require to meet entry requirements. This is probably the most significant point that you need to be thinking about for applying to UK medical schools, because nearly all of them require applicants to take an aptitude test either before or very soon after making their application. You do need to look into this quite carefully because you need to know which test the particular medical school requires. This can get quite complicated because some UK medical schools have different requirements for international applicants from home applicants. So, for example, Brighton and Sussex Medical School requires home applicants to do the biomedical admissions test, the BMAT, but it doesn't require international students to do it. Keele, for example, requires home students to do the UCAT, but it requires international students to do the BMAT. So research these things very carefully. Find out which test you need to do, when and where you're going to need to sit that test, how you should prepare for it, and you'll find details about that on the websites of the organisations that run the tests. And look very carefully at how the medical school uses the results, so you've got an idea whether realistically your application is going to be competitive. So I've indicated down here there's one medical school in the UK that only recruits international students, which is at Brunel University, and that one doesn't require international applicants to have taken an aptitude test. When you're applying to UK universities through the University and College Admissions Service, UCAS, part of that application is a personal statement of 4,000 characters, maximum of 47 lines. Now, these are fairly minimally used by medical schools, but again, you need to check very carefully for each particular medical school you're interested in to see what they want you to do for that personal statement, what kind of information they may take from it. Again, there are resources on the Medical Schools Council website. So there's a video that you can get that goes through how various medical schools use personal statements. Be aware, even if they're not used in selection for interview, they may very well be used as a source of questions within an interview. So it may well be important that you have taken your personal statement seriously so that you can get asked in an interview about things you actually want to talk about. And this will be summarising your case for selection on the basis of your commitment and motivation for medicine, your understanding of what a medical career is going to involve, and so on. Now, you need to research how medical schools select for interview, because there will be a large number of applicants and quite a small proportion of those will reach the stage of being interviewed. So you need to make sure that you're meeting the right criteria to get to an interview. When you get to an interview, be aware this year all interviews have been online. From next year, most medical schools would be hoping to go back to in-person interviews, but some will still run remote online interviews for international applicants. You need to find out if that's the case for the particular schools you want to apply to. You should be looking at the differences in format of medical school interviews, particularly the difference between multiple mini interviews and panel interviews. And the most significant thing to be aware of is most medical school interviews will not be assessing your academic ability. They'll be assessing the personal qualities you have that would make you suitable to train as a doctor. So again, you need to be researching quite carefully what kinds of characteristics the medical schools will be looking for. So an important point to take from this is you need to be careful to apply to medical schools whose selection criteria match your strengths. So if you've done very well in aptitude tests, it's worthwhile applying to medical schools that put quite a strong emphasis on aptitude tests. If you haven't done well in them, then you want to be looking for medical schools that place greater emphasis on other factors. Once you get to medical school, or when you're choosing which medical schools to apply to, you should be looking into the differences between them in terms of how the courses are structured, the ways in which teaching is delivered, and the balance of clinical placements between, say, hospital-based and community-based. And thinking about your career beyond graduation, looking at ways in which you can make future job applications more competitive. Now, the thing that's going to count most of that is where you rank your cohort at medical school. So the primary consideration really is going to the medical school where you think you're going to do best because the course fits your learning style most closely. So you want to be going somewhere that you're going to get the highest possible ranking within your cohort. But then where there are options within your course to choose to do particular small projects in particular areas, if you have an interest in being a surgeon, for example, you might want to be picking surgical focused selective and elective components in the course to make sure you have something to put on your CV when you come to apply for jobs later on. One point here about requirements for licensing to practice as a doctor. Most countries, in addition to requiring a medical degree, will require doctors to have passed a licensing exam. So you're probably aware of the one that's used in the US, the United States Medical Licensing Exam, the USMLE. The UK from 2014 is introducing something very similar to that called the Medical Licensing Assessment, or MLA. So from 2024, any medical graduate, wherever they've graduated in the world, will have to pass this assessment to be able to practice in the UK. So be aware that as well as completing your degree, you will have this additional assessment that you need to pass. Last point I'm going to make then, in terms of maximizing your potential for postgraduate opportunities, some idea of what particular specialities are in demand and which particular parts of the country, if you wish to stay in the UK graduation to work, are particularly short of. So there's a general high level of demand for doctors anyway, but there are particular specialities that have significant shortages at the moment, and they're listed on the right-hand side here. Now, other specialities, as I say, there are general shortages. There may be differences between different parts of the country. So if you want to take up a fairly popular training program, such as, well, anaesthetics is quite popular at the moment, you may find that very popular parts of the country like London are harder to find jobs in, and you may need to look elsewhere. Whereas if you're trying to get onto training programs for the shortage specialities, then you may have more choice on where in the country you get to train. Right, so I'm going to stop talking there and hand over to Adam to talk about allied health professions, and then we'll both deal with questions at the end.
Okay, thank you for that, Gordon. Thank you. Okay, can someone confirm that they can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, great. So I'm going to focus on physiotherapy, building on from that. So my name's Adam Winston. I'm the Faculty International Director for Medicine and Health Sciences, and also lead on admissions and recruitment for international students within physiotherapy and allied health. So I'm going to start by saying, well, there's approximately 51 physiotherapy programs in the UK. So what makes each of them different, and what should you be looking for? Ranking's not always the answer. I've got this badge here for Keele, top 10 for health professions, but does that really help you to pick a location that's right for you and maximise your success? So look, first, probably one thing to start with, a place like Keele is a very rural campus, as you can image there, whereas there'll be city centre locations. So what fits your preference for your learning, your experience? Because if you're happy outside of your learning, then it will make you successful within your learning. But also it might dictate geographically where other things are available, like placement locations, the facilities that are nearby. Can you have good connections to the country, to international airports? Can you travel and move around frequently and easily? These are all extra considerations to start with. What type of course is right for you? Now, this is just a screenshot really of what we offer at Keele, but this is just as a background for what is on offer in the UK. So a bachelor's in physiotherapy is a 3-year program, which is the most common offering for physiotherapy if you're a high school, college leaver, i.e. somebody without a full bachelor's degree. Now at Keele, we offer an integrated master's, which is a 4-year option, which is different to all the other universities. But what's right for you? That's a longer program that has more content and more detail, but the 3-year bachelor's, it may be right. If you have a degree already, then you might want to consider the middle option, the dark blue option, which is a master's known as a pre-registration master's in physiotherapy, which is basically an accelerated route into the profession. And that might be something that's more preferential and are offered by at least 20 different universities out of those 51 that I mentioned earlier on. And then some of you may have a qualification in physiotherapy, and you will be eligible for that 2-year pre-registration program, which then, when you graduate, alongside the same issue is true with the bachelor's or the integrated physio program that's on the screen that's listed as the MSci. They all come with a license to practice in the UK on graduation, and eligibility to apply to register with the Health and Care Professions Council is specifically. However, if you're a qualified physio, you may wish to just do a taught master's route, which the version of that we have at Keele is referred to as a master's in advanced physiotherapy, and there are subdivisions within different specialities within the profession there, and other universities will offer similar. Then you've got other aspects, so your clinical placement hours and location. This is really key when we think about employability, because how many hours do you get in your course? So the UK stipulates with the Health and Care Professions Council that you need at least 1,000 hours to be deemed as being competent to practice and to gain your license. In Hong Kong, it's 800 hours. In Canada, it's 1,025, for example. So how many hours does the university you're looking at offer? At Keele, we offer between 1,300 and 1,400, depending on if you're doing the 2-year accelerated through to the 4-year integrated masters. Where do those placements land? Many universities offer a first-year placement. I think that's essential, for really giving you the confidence and motivation that you're able to apply immediately your learning from the first year onwards. But where do they fit in the program, in the course? Obviously, the more placements you have, the more hours, the more diversity you're going to get in your placements, and therefore your CV as well. What we do know from our employers that we work with, and these are from the National Health Service through to others in the private and charity sectors and internationally, is that you need to be clinically competent as a physiotherapist from the first day that you start working. So the more experience, the more skills that you've gained from your program, obviously is going to help you with that and your future development. Do check that all universities guarantee their placements. Like Keele has a guarantee that every placement location for all students is available. Not all universities can offer that in physiotherapy. Some might say you can only go to one local hospital trust, as we refer to them as, or local authority, and that's the only place you might have a diversity in that one place, but that's the only place that you can go. And also check if accommodation and travel expenses are included as well. These are other questions to check, because otherwise you could end up being in a rural location, having to travel for every single placement, and obviously being of large expense to you personally. For example, Keele, we pay for all of our travel and accommodation expenses, so that there aren't any extra expenses for international students. And then where are the placements? So are there some international placements they offer? I'm just giving examples of what we offer at Keele, but it's certainly worth a question. Do they have specialist national placements? So some of the ones listed here, like St George's Park, for example, is where the English Football Association is based in a place called Burton-upon-Trent, which is not far from the university. Headley Court works with the Ministry of Defence and their rehabilitation centre. So it is looking at the diversity you're going to get. What specialist placements can I get? Because they'll look, again, fantastic on your CV. What facilities are on offer? So this is one of our lecturers, Fraser, who's teaching a session in our anatomy facilities. They are the anatomy suite, or cadaver suite, is based in the medical school where Gordon teaches, and it's a fantastic facility. Do you have access to that as a physiotherapy student? Is it even on campus at the location you're applying for? We have our own on-campus clinic, so students can actually volunteer their time and gain extra informal experience of working with real clients in our campus clinic. Fraser just happens to be one of those elite sport physios that works there. What other facilities do you have? So do you have specialist exercise facilities? I apologise that there's a little bit egotistical image there of me on one of the pictures. There's just one of the ones I could find. What are the teaching spaces like? Does it include the most up-to-date equipment? This is one of our exercise physiology testing images in the top left. Do you have a strength and conditioning suite to learn true exercise physiology and application like we have in the top right? And then what else do we have in the course? So, what elective modules are on offer? Can you specialise your training further? Some universities will offer that. All courses in the UK should cover the 3 core areas of physiotherapy practice. That's musculoskeletal, or MSK, cardiovascular respiratory, the CVR, and then neurological physiotherapy. But what other things do they include? Is there paediatric, working with children? Do they have leadership and management skills? All degrees in the UK will have a research theme to them. But what does that include? Is it a clinical research focused project? At Keele, all of our projects are connected to a supervisor who's an academic member of staff, some of which work solely as as researchers. And those topics then are of importance to the profession and will have an impact on the broader understanding of physiotherapy. Are there other added value things like study abroad years? Keele's the only university in the UK currently that offers that in physiotherapy, but it should start to become more popular, where you can study overseas within your degree if you choose to. And what's the staff-student ratio like? You obviously want to know that you're going to have the support of excellent practitioners who should obviously still either be practicing or have recently finished practicing or being in a research capacity. So we ask that question and look at that. Some of the league tables to give you that information as well, I'll be honest. And then looking at your future development, well, in the UK and in many international countries, a master's, even a PhD, is usually required for a more senior position, but it's not required for your first entry-level job. So it doesn't matter if you pick a master's program or a bachelor's program, you'll gain employment on graduation. But what else does the university offer? Could you stay and continue your training to help accelerate your career potentially? Also, what's the diversity like in the cohort? Keele has the largest international cohort of physiotherapy students in the UK because we have 2 physiotherapy programs of at least up to 30% of international students within them. Does the university you're looking at have that experience? Does it have that exposure and that understanding of how to support you best? That's something to look at and understand. What other things does the university offer to broaden your CV? What I can say is that there is a very large market of jobs for physiotherapy around the world, not just in the UK. So on graduation, 100% of our students last year, in fact, for the last 4 years, have got jobs on graduation as a physiotherapist, not working in Starbucks or another location. But that doesn't mean that it's not competitive for the place that you want to work. You might want to, let's say, if you want to work in a particular location, particular city, in a particular hospital, because that's where it's best for you. It'll be competitive. So what makes you different? That's the key. And that university program should give you some of that, as well as your own, broader extracurricular activities. And it's really key now that you have that experience, not just as a clinician through the clinical hours and the skills you learn on a course, but also as a researcher. Those skills are being required much earlier in people's careers now. So look at the research theme in the programs that you're applying for. Our Keele program obviously graduates students at master's level, so you do a master's dissertation, which is different obviously to a bachelor's research project. But look at those nuances in the programs. And then we look at selection. So UCAS is obviously where we get the majority of our applications from. Okay, we can accept direct applications from some international partners that we have, agents that we work with. You'll screen on grades first. All universities will do this, and it'll be a similar offering of what's presented on the screen here, of an approximate 80% average across most universities in the UK. Pretty much all universities will also ask for an IELTS equivalent of 7.0 and nothing less than 6.5. Beyond that, however, we do look at the personal statement, which is slightly different to medicine. And this sometimes can be an issue if students are applying for medicine and physiotherapy is their extra non-medical choice. We're looking for your understanding of what is physiotherapy, what are your personal qualities that match those of a physiotherapist or of a health professional. You don't have to write the personal statement as a physiotherapist if you're applying for medicine, of course. But nonetheless, what insights do you have into the profession and interest and work experience? Beyond that, we offer an interview. Now, they're based on these values, these 6Ds, and it's well worth absorbing, not just now in this one screenshot, but before any health interview. These are the sorts of values that we try and instill or look for in our graduates and our professionals beyond that. In terms of work experience, we're not so bothered recently about it being with a physiotherapist, because yes, that is the gold standard to observe a clinician, and you could do that online. There's lots of videos now, and in fact our national governing body, the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, are just working on a project to help support students with this. Because of the coronavirus, or even just because of the governance within a hospital, it's not easy to go in and view people doing their work. But ideally, we want to see evidence of how you've gained some of those 6 Cs. It may be that you've cared for a sick relative. It might be that you've had a volunteer experience through your school or other extracurricular activities. And these are some of the examples that you could use. Always supplement this with reading. Look online, Universities UK, UCAS, Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, all the league tables have snippets about the course physiotherapy. What is it? What do you do? What's that profession all about? Do absorb that information, because it will really help you in writing the personal statement, but also in the interview as well. So if you're successful, hopefully in all of that, then you'll come to an interview. We do apply the multi-mini interviews like Gordon would have described for medicine. We do it in a slightly different way, in that all of ours are online for international students. Unless you're in the UK, we invite you to campus as and when visits to campus are permitted. And our stations that we use may only be 3 or 4 within physiotherapy programs. Some universities might do it slightly different. They might have you in a group activity. Some will be just one-to-one, or it might be 2 members of staff to 1 student. But really looking for that, they're looking for that understanding of what the profession entails. Why do you want to do that profession? What's challenging about that profession? They might ask you specific questions, challenges that can happen as a student or as a professional. And then beyond that, the majority of all universities in the UK for physio will ask you to do a police record check. That might be a certificate of good standing or a certificate of no criminal convictions, both from your home country and also usually a disclosure and barring service check within the UK, which then covers you for all of your clinical placements, because you'll be working with vulnerable adults and children. Obviously, you will need occupational health screening. That's not to prevent you from going on to the programme, but just to support you better. As the pandemic has taught us, obviously, we want to make sure we protect students' health when exposed to other things on the placements. And all universities will normally sign you up as a student member of the Charter Society of Physiotherapy, which gives you indemnity insurance to cover your clinical practice, as well as obviously other information and invites to events. And then that's the end of my slide. So I'll stop sharing there because I appreciate we may have some questions. So does anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
The questions we've had coming in the chat, Adam, have largely been about veterinary medicine. So we'll see now whether anybody has any about medicine or physiotherapy or allied health professions.
Okay, perfect.
Actually, you might know, Adam, there's a question about scholarships for international students. I know at Keele we don't have them for medicine. Do you have them for physio?
No, we don't offer scholarships for any of our health related programs. There are, I mean, on the Keele website, we'll put the link in the chat in a second, is a link to all scholarships and funding if you're considering other programs that aren't medicine, physiotherapy, pharmacy, for example. But no, I know some universities may offer scholarships for some health programs, but we don't, and most often don't, because of the clinical placement costs, and that's usually why they're not necessarily offered. But yeah, we don't have them at Keele, unfortunately.
Okay, we've gone over our time, so might need to ask for any last minute questions before you go on to visit university booths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't look as though there's any questions coming in, so I think we can probably end the session here. And if you want to meet Dr. Gordon or Adam to discuss more about their courses, then come to the Keele University booth. Happy to speak to you there and answer any of your questions. Okay? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.